Before you open your eyes, the cold is already there. Not loudly, not in a rush, just a quiet presence close enough to touch your skin. It reaches your cheek first, where the skin is thinnest, like an invisible hand resting gently on a face at rest. It doesn't startle you. It doesn't fully wake you. It's only enough to slow your breathing, make it deeper, heavier, just slightly. When you inhale, the cold air slides through your nose down your throat, carrying a dry, sharp sensation, nothing like the familiar warmth of a modern room. You don't need to move yet. You don't need to think. You only need to be here and feel. Outside, the world is still wrapped in darkness. Not the deep darkness of midnight, but the fragile stillness just before dawn, when everything seems to pause, waiting for a new day. No engines, no lights, only silence and the cold, steady, persistent real. If right now you're lying safely on a soft bed beneath thick blankets, let that comparison pass through your mind briefly, and then gently let it go. Because in this story we are leaving that familiar comfort behind, stepping into a very different morning. If this slow rhythm helps you relax, feel free to gently tap like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel, so you can continue traveling backward through time with me to nights where history doesn't wake you up but lulls you to sleep. And now let the cold do what it has always done since the very beginning: wake humanity. Not with noise, but with sensation. The cold doesn't need to be named. It doesn't need explanation. It simply exists. You notice it more clearly when your breath begins to take shape in the air. With every exhale, a thin white mist appears before you, hanging for a brief moment before fading away. The space around you remains dark, but the cold doesn't need light to be felt. A patch of skin on your hand, accidentally exposed beyond the blanket, begins to tighten. Your fingertips slowly lose the warmth they're used to, not all at once, but gradually, almost as if the cold is patiently waiting for your attention. It doesn't force itself. It doesn't rush. This isn't the cold of a passing moment. This is the cold of a long night. A cold that was already here long before you woke. In this pre-dawn darkness, time seems to move more slowly. Every small movement becomes noticeable. Even a slight shift of your body changes how warmth is distributed. People in the past understood this deeply, even if they never described it in scientific terms. Cold is a real physical force. It draws heat away from the body. It doesn't care who you are, where you're from, or what you've lived through. There's no hostility in the cold, only consistency. When you stay still, warmth gathers thin, fragile but precious. When you move, that warmth disperses, and the cold immediately fills the space you've created. It's a silent exchange happening minute by minute, breath by breath, unnoticed by most. The space around you remains quiet, but inside your body many things are happening. Skin tightens to preserve heat. Lungs adjust their rhythm. The heart slows, slightly conserving energy. Everything works together without commands, without conscious thought. If you're used to the steady temperature of a modern room, allow yourself a brief comparison. Here there's no number on a thermostat, no familiar 68 degrees Fahrenheit. There is only your body and the environment around it. In this world, cold isn't a temporary discomfort. It's the foundation of existence. It's the first thing people feel when they wake, and the last thing they think about before they sleep. The darkness before dawn still blankets everything. Light hasn't arrived yet, but the cold doesn't wait. It settles on wooden floors, lingers in the air, seeps through every narrow crack. It enters the body through breath, through skin, through layers of clothing. People don't fight the cold with thought. They adapt to it with rhythm. They learn to move more slowly, to keep warmth close for longer, to listen to their bodies. At this stage, we don't need names, faces, or personal stories. We don't need to know where these people lived, or how many winters they endured. We only need to remain with this feeling, the most primal sensation every human in every era has known. The cold doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply arrives. And in this moment, before the sun rises, before the day begins, humans realize something very simple: how fragile life truly is, and how precious warmth can be. Not the warmth of possessions, but warmth that is preserved, shared, watched over through the long night. When the cold has sharpened every sense, when the body is fully present in this space, you begin to feel something else waiting ahead. Not light, not movement, but a small ember, faint, glowing quietly, holding the boundary between life and the frozen night. And from that point the story truly begins, where fire is not just light, but life itself, carefully held between darkness and cold. After the cold has reached every layer of skin, every measured breath, something else begins to reveal itself in the darkness. Not through bright light, but through a very small, very fragile red glow resting deep within the stove. These are the embers left from the night before, quietly releasing a thin thread of warmth like a heartbeat, slowed but not stopped. You don't need to step closer to recognize them. You only need to look. In the stillness of the cabin, that faint red glow is the only thing the darkness cannot fully consume. It doesn't flare. It doesn't dance. It simply says, "This, the fire is still alive." The stove stands there, familiar as part of the house itself. Its cast iron surface is dark and cold to the touch on the outside, but inside it holds on to the last remaining heat. Ash blankets the embers like a thin quilt placed carefully the night before, not to smother the fire, but to slow its breathing, to help it last through the long night. In this world, fire is not something to admire. It is not decoration. It is a boundary. If the fire dies, the cold advances faster. If the fire dies, water will not melt. If the fire dies, the night becomes longer than the human body can endure. You can feel a subtle tension in the cabin air. No one speaks of it, but everyone knows. It is the silence of people who are listening, not for sound, but for life itself. Ears grow accustomed to the faint crackle of embers. Eyes learn the rhythm of the dim red glow as it fades, then gently returns with each breath of the struggling fire. In another corner of the cabin, children are sleeping. Their breathing is steady, light, deep. Small bodies curled beneath blankets, drawing warmth from one another, from straw, from the air that has been carefully preserved through the night. They know nothing of the embers. They don't need to. Their sleep is the reason the fire must not be allowed to die. The adults are different. Their sleep is shallow, not from fear but from habit, a habit shaped by many winters when people learned that night is not a time for complete surrender. Some part of consciousness is always held back for the stove, for the wind outside, for the faint crack of wood settling. The fire must not go out, not because of panic, but because the consequences are understood. No one discusses it inside the cabin. There are no reminders, no commands. Everyone simply knows where the stove is, how much distance to keep, how to look and tell whether the embers are still enough. This knowledge is not learned from books. It is learned from long nights, from watching, from moments when the fire was nearly lost. The ember glow reflects softly off rough wooden walls. Shadows of familiar objects, the table, the chairs, the water bucket, stretch long and still. Space itself seems to pause around the stove. Everything else in the cabin becomes secondary to this center. Fire is life, not in an abstract sense, but in a very literal one. Fire allows bodies to warm again when needed. Fire keeps water from becoming permanent ice. Fire prevents the cabin from being fully claimed by the cold. And so, while children sleep, adults remain awake, not fully awake, but suspended between rest and alertness. Eyes half closed. Ears still listening. Bodies ready to move slowly if another small piece of wood is needed, if ash must be shifted at just the right moment. There is no heroism in this moment, only quiet responsibility. The cold outside does not knock, it simply waits. And the fire here inside is the only thing declaring that humans are still present, not through sound but through heat. You can feel this boundary clearly. One step away from the stove and the temperature drops. One step closer and the skin on your face softens. No measuring is needed. The body knows. The body learns to live in a space divided by fire and darkness. In the modern world, fire is often just light. Here it is time itself. Every ember is a moment preserved. Every bit of warmth is another breath granted. No one wishes for a roaring blaze. They only need the fire not to die. And in this patience, humans learn to respect fire as a living thing, not something to fully control, but something to tend, observe, and listen to. Fire breathes with the air. Fire responds to the wind. Fire weakens when neglected. As the night continues, the embers remain dim but enduring, holding a fragile line between life and the cold waiting beyond the walls. No praise is given. No names are spoken. And when the embers finally need to be awakened, when that moment arrives, naturally no one rushes. They will do what they have always done, what has been passed down through mornings just like this. Slow, precise movements, a careful ritual bringing the fire back to its full breath once more. Once the embers have been found, once the boundary between life and the frozen night is clearly visible. No one rushes to act. No one lunges toward the stove. There is no urgency. Every movement is slow, as if the fire, weak though it may be, is still listening. You step closer to the stove, not to create a new fire, but to wake what is already sleeping inside. Ash is gently pushed aside with a familiar wooden stick. Not forcefully, just enough to reveal the deep, smouldering red points beneath, small and buried like eyes slowly opening in the dark. The embers are still breathing, only very faintly. You lower yourself close enough to feel the thin warmth against your face. The air here is different from the rest of the cabin, slightly warmer, slightly drier, carrying the familiar scent of old smoke. It is the smell of long nights already endured of wood that has given up everything easy to burn, leaving only its core. No one blows hard, just one soft breath. That breath is not meant to create fire instantly. It only brings air back, giving the embers a reason to continue. You watch how they respond. If the glow strengthens even slightly, you stop. If it fades, you wait. Fire does not like to be rushed. A small piece of dry tinder is placed exactly where it belongs, not too close, not too far. It was chosen earlier and kept beside the stove, thin, dry slivers of wood that catch easily and hold just enough heat. You place them as one would place food before a weakened living being, knowing that too much is harmful and too little is useless. Fire is a living thing. It needs air, it needs fuel, and it needs time. You don't stare. You watch by habit. Your eyes are trained to notice the smallest changes in color, the slowest shifts in pace. When the tinder darkens, when the edges of the wood begin to curl, you know it's time to adjust. One more breath. Very soft, very steady. There is no sudden flare, no dramatic ignition, only a return. The flame does not arrive as a victory. It comes as a continuation, a flow that had slowed, now allowed to move again. The light is not much stronger, but it is enough to spread, to reach toward the larger pieces of wood waiting nearby. You place the next log carefully, not directly on the tinder, not smothering it. Fire needs space to breathe. That space is learned through many failures, through nights when the fire died, because too much was added too quickly. Nearby, a child has woken, not fully awake, just eyes opening in shallow sleep. The child watches you, watches the stove without asking questions. You don't explain. You simply continue letting the child see. Knowledge in this world is not taught with words. It is passed through repetition. The parent does. The child watches. And one day the child does the same. No lesson is named, only rhythm. Every cold morning the sequence repeats. Push aside ash. Read the embers. Breathe softly. Place tinder. Wait. Adjust. Add larger wood. Wait again. The fire grows, but never beyond what is needed. No one wants to waste fuel. No one wants to overheat the cabin, only to have it grow cold again too quickly. In this ritual, time itself is part of the technique. Too fast, and the fire dies. Too slow, and the cold wins. When the fire is strong enough to sustain itself, you step back. Not too far, not turning away immediately. You watch a little longer, making sure it has found a steady rhythm of breath. The light now clearly outlines the cabin. Wooden walls take shape. Human shadows rest softly on the floor. There is no applause, no congratulations, only a quiet, deep sense of reassurance. The child falls back asleep. The adults sit near the stove, letting warmth slowly return to their bodies. No one says the fire has been revived. They simply know that the day can begin slowly from here. This ritual does not change with the years. It does not need improvement. It was shaped by the simplest observation of all, how fire responds to humans, and how humans adjust themselves to fire. This is not a technique for conquering nature. It is a way of living alongside it. As the fire stabilizes, you begin to feel the cabin itself change. Heat spreads more evenly. The sharp pockets of cold disappear. The air softens. The smell of new smoke gradually replaces the old signaling that another cycle has begun. And in that quiet moment when the fire has been brought back to life, the cabin is no longer just a passive shelter. It begins to function like a living body, holding heat, distributing warmth, protecting those inside from the cold that still waits beyond the walls. Once the fire has found its breathing rhythm again, you begin to sense the space around you more clearly, not with your eyes at first, but with your skin. Warmth spreads slowly, unevenly, forming different zones within the cabin, places that are warmer, places that remain cooler, as if the house itself is quietly reorganizing its balance. The cabin is not a sealed box. It does not hold heat by shutting the world out completely. It holds heat through understanding. You sit still and realize that warmth does not stay anchored to the stove. It moves. It creeps along the wooden floor, climbs the walls, gathers beneath the ceiling, then drifts downward again. The cabin has its own invisible but very real heat map, and the people who live here know every pathway that warmth follows. The stove is always placed at the center, not for convenience but out of necessity. From here, heat can radiate in all directions, without being trapped by thick walls or dead corners. The stove is never set beside the door, never beneath a window. It rests where wind struggles to reach, where fire can breathe without disturbance. Beds are never placed in the center of the cabin. They are tucked against inner walls, where the heat has softened, not too hot, not too cold. Children sleep lower, closer to the floor, where warmth settles after completing its slow circuit beneath the ceiling. Adults choose familiar spots, knowing which floorboards feel colder in the morning, which walls hold heat better through the long night. Windows are small, not meant for looking out, but for letting in just enough light. The glass is thick and dull, sometimes nothing more than a simple membrane. It allows the day to enter without inviting the cold along with it. Wind, if it wants inside, must pass through a low doorway draped with heavy fabric, forcing it to slow, to lose strength before reaching the heart of the cabin. The walls are never perfectly straight. Logs are stacked with gaps, with slight bulges and recesses, yet it is precisely this imperfection that allows the cabin to hold heat. Air becomes trapped in tiny spaces, forming invisible insulating layers. Thick wood absorbs warmth during the day and releases it slowly through the night. The floor is colder than the walls. The ceiling is warmer than the floor. You know this without measuring it. You feel it when your bare feet touch the boards in the morning and cold rises from below. You know it when you notice that the warmest air always lingers above, near the ceiling, where lighter objects are hung to dry. Coats hides anything that benefits from steady warmth. The cabin functions like a living body. The stove is its heart. The walls are its skin. The floor and ceiling are protective layers. Nothing inside the cabin is unnecessary. Nothing exists simply to fill space. Every chair, every table, every wooden box has a considered position. Objects don't just occupy space. They shape the flow of heat. A box placed incorrectly can create a cold pocket. A cloth hung in the wrong place can block warmth where it is needed. The people who live here don't call this design. They call it familiarity. Through many winters, the cabin teaches them how to adjust. When the wind changes direction, they know which wall will grow colder. When snow thickens, they know how much more heat the roof can hold. No blueprints are needed. No calculations required. They simply live within the cabin long enough to learn its language. At night, when everyone sleeps, the cabin continues its work. Wooden walls release stored warmth slowly. The cold floor prevents the air from becoming too dry. The ceiling holds on to the last layer of heat. Everything operates in silence, without instruction or intervention. This is not a shelter built to fight nature. It is a place shaped to adapt to it. The cabin does not try to keep all the heat. It keeps enough. Enough to live. Enough to sleep. Enough to wake again in the morning. No more. No less. Anything excessive becomes a burden on the fire, on the wood supply, on human effort. As you sit quietly in this space, you begin to understand that the cabin is not a static object. It shifts with the hour, with the weather, with the number of people inside. When the family gathers, warmth rises. When everyone sleeps, it settles. The cabin adjusts slowly, like a large shared breath. In the modern world, we are used to spaces serving human comfort. Here, humans serve the balance of the space. No one tries to make the cabin perfect. They only try to make it livable. And it is this sense of enough that creates a deep, unspoken safety. Not dramatic, not loud. A quiet certainty that everyone knows their place within these walls. That each night when they lie down, the cabin will do its part, holding warmth, holding stillness, holding rhythm. And once you understand the cabin as a heat-holding ecosystem, you begin to notice something even more important. Warmth does not come only from the stove or the wooden walls. It also comes from the way people choose to sleep close together, choose to share space, choose to remain within the same circle of warmth. And from there, the story moves deeper still toward the place where the most precious warmth of all is created. Once the cabin has settled into its breathing rhythm, once the wooden walls and ceiling are quietly doing their work of holding heat, another source of warmth begins to reveal itself more clearly. It gives off no light. It carries no scent of smoke. Yet it is real, unmistakable, and close. It is human presence. You look toward the low sleeping beds placed close together, where children are asleep. They do not sleep alone. There is no distance between them. Small bodies curl beneath shared blankets, instinctively drawing closer, as if their bodies learned what to do long before any instruction was ever needed. Their breathing is steady, slow, soft. Each breath carries warmth released into the narrow space between blankets, between skin and coarse fabric. Not enough to heat the entire cabin, but enough to form a protected thermal pocket, a place where sleep can remain. The children do not understand the cabin's heat patterns. They do not know where the stove sits or how the wind outside has shifted. Their bodies know only how to seek warmth. An arm rests across another child's back. A foot touches a familiar calf. These small unconscious contacts have real effects. Warmth lingers longer. Heartbeats slow. Sleep deepens. Here, a bed is not furniture. It is shared space. There are no thick mattresses, no artificial insulation, only dry straw, animal hides and arrangements refined through many winters. Adults know where to place children to avoid drafts. They know which side of the cabin holds warmth longer at night. They know that separating them would allow heat to escape too quickly. Humans are a source of heat, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. You feel it when you sit near the sleeping area. The air here is subtly different, softer, less sharp, not because of the stove, but because many bodies are maintaining a shared rhythm of breath. This peace is fragile. Nothing guarantees it will last. If the fire weakens, if the wind rises, if someone must remain outside too long, and precisely because of that fragility, everyone protects it quietly. No one wakes the children unless absolutely necessary. No one shifts the sleeping spaces before the night has passed. Every movement is measured to avoid breaking this small circle of warmth. Adults sleep nearby, not to guard in an active sense, but to let their bodies add to the shared heat. An arm within reach, a shoulder turned inward. Their presence does not need to be noticed, but it is always there. There are no loud lullabies, no grand gestures, only staying. In the modern world, we are used to thinking of warmth as something material generated by heaters, insulation numbers on a thermostat. Here, warmth comes from the choice to stay close, to remain together, to share living and sleeping space. No one calls this sacrifice. It is simply how life is lived. Children sleep more deeply when they sense familiar breathing nearby. That rhythm is not a sound, but a feeling, a steady assurance that the night is being held. You begin to understand that in this cabin, sleep is not passive. It is part of survival. Sleeping in the right place, in the right way, near the right people. All of it matters as much as tending the fire or stacking wood. No one wants to dwell on the alternative. But everyone knows it exists. This calm endures because many things are working together. If one weakens, everything must adjust. And so sleep here is always paired with a gentle awareness, no tension, no fear, just presence. As you watch the children sleep, you don't feel overwhelmed with emotion. There are no tears, no sweeping thoughts, only a quiet understanding. This is how humans have always survived, by staying close, keeping one another warm, and allowing sleep to happen within the shared embrace of community. And when human warmth has spread evenly through the cabin, when the breathing of the entire family naturally aligns, you begin to sense another boundary of survival ahead. Not warmth, but the resources waiting beyond these walls, where water and snow hold their own silent roles in the life of winter. Once human warmth has settled within the cabin, once the children's sleep remains steady and deep, another need quietly comes into focus. Not urgent, not loud, but impossible to ignore. It is water. In winter, water is no longer something that flows. It stands still. It hardens. It disappears from its familiar forms and becomes snow, ice, frost. You no longer hear the sound of water, only its silence, a dry, cold silence. The water containers inside the cabin are no longer clear. A thin layer of ice has formed across the surface. Left long enough, the entire vessel will freeze solid. No one is surprised by this. They simply observe and accept it, as people always do when they live alongside winter. Water does not disappear. It only needs to be awakened. You step outside during a moment of calm wind. Not far, just enough to gather clean snow, untouched by footsteps, unmixed with soil. The snow is light, airy, almost weightless. But you know it holds water. Very little in each handful, yet enough if patience is applied. Snow is carried back into the cabin in small containers. No one brings too much at once. Not because of the weight, but because everything must pass through fire. And fire has limits. Snow is placed into a pot. The pot is set on the stove. The fire waits. There is no rushing. Heat too quickly and the water will evaporate before it can be used. Heat too slowly and time stretches on while wood is consumed unnecessarily. Everything here is a fragile balance between fire, water, and time. You watch the snow melt. There is no sound, only slow transformation. From white to clear, from soft to liquid, from silence to readiness. Each pot of water is the result of many things working together: snow from outside, wood from storage, fire preserved through the night, and human time. There is no excess water. None is wasted. Water is used for drinking first, then for cooking. Only afterward, if there is any left for washing hands or faces. No one needs to speak this order aloud. It exists naturally like a rhythm already memorized by the body. Here, water is not just water. It is time made usable. Each warm sip belongs to the morning. Each bowl of soup belongs to the day, and every drop spilled outside the pot is energy lost. The people in the cabin understand that everything is consumed. Wood burns away. Snow melts away. Fire weakens. Time moves forward. Nothing is replenished quickly. And so, nothing is used carelessly. Life's rhythm at this moment is even and unbroken. No peaks, no lows. Only gentle repetition: gather snow, melt it, use only what is needed, wait. Each action follows the next like breathing, no thought required, yet none can be skipped. You begin to realize that winter survival is not built on great gestures. It rests on small actions done at the right pace, heating water at the right moment, not waiting until there is none left, not melting too much, not letting fire work alone. Fire and water are not opposites here. They depend on each other. Without fire, water cannot return. Without water, fire loses its meaning. And both require time, a resource unseen yet always scarce. People do not try to save time. They live within it. They let snow melt slowly, let fire burn steadily, let the day pass without forcing it forward. In this moment the cabin is quiet. Children still sleep. Adults move softly. A pot of water rests on the stove, releasing a thin warmth that blends into the shared air. No one checks a clock. No one counts minutes. There is only the sense that everything is unfolding as it should. In the modern world, water is always available. Here, water is an outcome. And it is this slowness that creates a deep calm. Not because scarcity is absent, but because scarcity has been accepted, not resisted, not complained about, only adjusted to. When the pot of water is ready, when the minimum needs have been met, you begin to sense the next step, not as a thought, but as a physical awareness. Because after water, after sleep, after warmth, there comes a moment when people must prepare for the day ahead with another source of energy, one gathered in summer and carefully stored through the long winter months. After the water has been melted, after warmth and rhythm inside the cabin have settled into balance, people begin thinking about something else, not for this moment alone, but for the many hours and days ahead. That something is firewood. The woodpile does not sit inside the cabin. It rests just outside, carefully sheltered, close enough to reach quickly, far enough to keep moisture from entering the living space. When you open the storage door, the scent of dry wood spreads immediately, a smell entirely different from smoke, the smell of summer preserved. Here, wood is not just wood. Each type carries its own character. Oak, heavy, dense, tightly grained. When you lift it, you feel the weight of time itself. Oak does not rush to burn. It holds fire, slowly releases heat, evenly, patiently. This is the wood for long nights when steady warmth matters more than quick flame. Hickory, hard and rich with scent. When it burns, the heat is deep, spreading slowly but lasting well. Hickory is used when higher heat is needed for cooking or for warming the cabin quickly in the early morning hours. Its aroma lingers familiar and unmistakable. Pine light, resinous, quick to catch. Pine does not stay long. It burns bright, hot and fast. Pine is not meant to last through the night. It is meant to wake the fire. This is the wood of beginnings. You do not mix everything together. You choose according to the moment. Early morning, when the cabin is still cold, pine comes first to rouse the flame and bring heat back into the space. Once the fire steadies, hickory or oak is added to hold the rhythm. At night, while everyone sleeps, oak is the trusted choice, slow, durable, needing little attention. This is not complex calculation. It is memory held in the body. The woodpile itself is arranged with intention, not by size or by quantity, but by purpose. Small, easy starting pieces are kept within reach. Larger, thicker logs are stacked deeper, older wood in front, newer wood behind. Nothing is forgotten. Firewood is never stacked directly on the ground. Moisture is the quiet enemy. Wooden supports lift the pile, allowing air to move freely beneath. Snow may cover the top, but it never reaches the core. When you touch a good log, it is dry, lighter than it looks, and sounds hollow when tapped. People here do not call this science, but it is science. Each piece of wood is stored energy from summer, sunlight, rain, soil time, all condensed into grain. When burned, you are not just burning wood. You are releasing summer in the middle of winter. There is no excess firewood. No useless wood. If a log burns unevenly, it is set aside for later. If a type burns too quickly, it is saved for the moment when fast heat is needed. There are no mistakes, only adjustments. This knowledge is not written down, it is repeated. Day after day, year after year. Children watch adults choose wood. Adults do not explain much. They simply move slowly enough for others to see the difference between pine and oak, between dry wood and damp. In the modern world, energy comes from a switch. Here, energy lives in storage. You know exactly how many warm days remain just by looking at the wood pile. No counting, no numbers. Eyes and body know. And this finiteness creates a slower rhythm of life. No one burns wood for appearance. No one lets fire roar without reason. Each log is a quiet decision, small but meaningful, shaping the length of the night. When you carry an oak log into the cabin, you feel its weight not only in your hands, but in your awareness. How long will it burn? Who will it warm? For how many hours? No one asks. Everyone understands. The wood pile is not a place of hoarding. It is a place of balance, taking enough, leaving enough, always keeping a small space open, not because of lack, but because winter is not yet finished. And once the wood pile is ordered, once the stored energy of summer has been set in its proper place for winter, people prepare to step outside more often, leaving the safety of the cabin to meet the wide, quiet, neutral landscape waiting beyond. After the woodpile has been checked, after the energy of summer has been carefully arranged for use throughout winter, there comes a moment when people must leave the familiar safety behind, not because they want to, but because they must. You open the cabin door. The instant the door cracks open, the outside air moves in, not forcefully, not urgently, but enough to make the difference immediately clear. The cold outside is not like the cold inside the cabin. It has not been softened. It has not been held. It is bare, direct, and indifferent to how prepared you think you are. You step outside. Snow covers the ground, completely flat and quiet, as if the landscape has been wiped clean of movement. The morning light is pale, reflecting off the snow with a stillness that feels almost unreal. There are no loud sounds, no sharp motion, only openness. This is a dangerous kind of beauty, not because it is violent, but because it is silent. You draw a breath, and the cold air goes straight into your lungs. Your breath stiffens at the tip of your nose. Your throat dries. Each exhale becomes a visible cloud, dissolving quickly, a reminder that heat is leaving your body moment by moment. Out here there are no wooden walls to hold warmth, no ceiling to slow the wind, no stove to regulate rhythm. Nature does not move toward you. It has been here from the beginning. Trees stand still, heavy snow resting on their branches. They do not sway. They do not fall. They do not threaten, but they do not welcome you either. The ground is hard and cold, unresponsive beneath your feet, except for its firmness and faint slickness. You walk more slowly, not from fear, but because your body adjusts on its own. Every step consumes energy. Every step must be considered. Here, wide space does not mean freedom. It means greater responsibility for every movement. There are no birds, no running water, only a light wind, just enough to tell you its direction against your cheek. Nature is neutral. It does not want you to live, but it does not try to kill you. If you stand still too long, the cold will take your heat. If you move too quickly, sweat will chill you faster. Everything is a simple equation, but mistakes are not allowed, and there is no one here to correct them. The beauty of the landscape does not change with human emotion. Snow remains white. The sky stays pale grey. Trees continue to stand. Nature does not react to your presence. It only allows you to be there for a limited time. You realize that the cabin behind you, small and rough and simple as it is, belongs to a larger system of survival. Stepping away from it means leaving the buffer zone. And it is this contrast that sharpens everything. Open space makes your heartbeat more noticeable, your breathing louder. Every movement has sound. Inside the cabin you blend into the space. Out here you are a small point within it. You do not stay outside long. There is no need. Just long enough to gather what is required to check what must be checked. No one lingers to admire the view. No one is distracted by the beauty. Beauty does not save anyone from the cold. When you turn and look back at the cabin, it appears smaller than it felt from inside. But it is clearer too. A dark wooden shape against the bright snow. An anchor, a place to return to. And in that moment, standing between open land and shelter, you understand your place in this world very clearly. Not at the center, not as a conqueror, just a small part, trying to adapt. Nature does not change its rhythm for people. People change their rhythm to fit nature. You return to the cabin. Open the door. Warmer air immediately settles against your face. Not as dramatic relief, but as a gentle return. One step out, one step in, two different worlds not opposed, just continuous. And because you have stepped outside, because you have faced that neutral space directly, you understand more deeply the value of every small action inside the cabin. Everything done within, tending the fire, melting water, arranging wood, is preparation for moments like this. When the cabin door closes, the space contracts again. Life slows. But nature does not disappear. It waits just beyond the wooden wall unhurried. And to continue living alongside it, people must do one more thing, not with thought but with the body. A task repeated steady, bound to breath and hand, where labor is not struggle but a slow ritual of staying alive. After stepping outside and fully sensing the neutrality of nature, people do not linger. They do not continue observing. They begin to work, not to fight the cold but to live alongside it. You move slowly across the thin layer of snow, searching for trees that were chosen earlier. Not the largest, not the most beautiful, just the right ones. Trees that died in the previous season, dry trunks, no longer carrying sap. Their wood is lighter, easier to cut, and burns the way it should. Choosing the tree is the first step of the ritual. Not rushed, not random. You place your hand on the trunk, feeling its hardness through the bark. No need to strike it. Experience is enough. This tree is ready. That one is not. Not every tree should be cut. Not every moment is the right time. When the saw meets the wood, the first sound cuts cleanly through the quiet. A dry, steady rhythm that doesn't travel far. You don't push hard. You let the blade do its work. Up, down, up, down. A rhythm begins to form in your hands. Your breathing follows. You exhale as you pull the saw. Inhale as you ease it forward. No instruction is needed. The body finds its own pace. Move too fast and you tire. Move too slowly and the wood resists. The right rhythm lives in between, where effort is balanced, breath stays calm, and motion remains unbroken. Snow falls lightly from the branches above. It doesn't startle you. It simply reminds you that you are outside. The space is wide. No one urges you on. There is only the task in front of you, and time moving steadily forward. When the tree finally falls, there is no cheer. Just a low, brief sound, and then quiet returns. You stand still for a moment. Not to rest, but to listen. The space settles back into itself. Once the sawing is done, you begin splitting. The axe is heavy, but there is no need to swing high. You place the blade along the grain. Light, precise. One strike, then another. The wood opens in its own way, not in resistance, only in response to proper alignment. Labor here is not strain, it is repetition. The rhythm of hands, the rhythm of breath, the rhythm of the body. No one speaks much while cutting wood, not because of the cold, but because words are unnecessary. Everything that matters is happening in motion. The sound of the saw, the crack of splitting wood, breath rising into the air as thin white vapor. Working well means not rushing, not using all your strength, not trying to finish quickly. Each log is cut to the right size, easy to carry, easy to stack, easy to burn in the stove. You don't think about tonight. You don't think about next week. You think only about the next stroke of the saw. In this world, labor is not something to endure. It is part of living, a way for the body to stay warm, a way for the mind to settle. When your hands are busy, your thoughts slow. When movement becomes steady, the mind follows. There is no long philosophy here, no explanations required. Cutting wood is necessary, but how it is done is what matters. How to avoid exhaustion, how not to waste wood, how to let each movement serve the entire day, not just this moment. When you gather the split logs and stack them neatly, you feel a gentle warmth inside. Not from fire, but from motion. Your cheeks are warm. Your breath is deeper. The body has worked at its proper pace. You return to the cabin. The door opens. Warmer air meets your face. The wood is placed where it belongs. No one counts it. No one praises the effort. They simply see and know that the work has been done. Outside, nature remains neutral. Inside, the rhythm of life continues. And it is only after the labor is finished, after the body has spent enough energy, that people begin to sense something else approaching, not from the ground, but from the sky. Faint signs of change, subtle signals that time does not stand still, and that a snowstorm is quietly forming somewhere in the distance. After the outdoor labor is finished, after the wood has been carried in and placed where it belongs inside the cabin, something shifts very slightly. Not through sound, not through any obvious change you can point to. Just a subtle feeling, as if the air outside has grown heavier. You don't look up at the sky right away. You feel it on your skin. The wind isn't stronger, but it's steadier. The familiar pauses between gusts are gone. The cold on your cheeks lingers longer. And when you exhale, the white cloud of breath doesn't disappear as quickly as before. It stays for one extra beat, then fades. That is the first sign. Those who have lived through many winters don't need to say it out loud. They exchange a brief glance and keep moving. No one suddenly speeds up. No one raises their voice. The rhythm of life stays the same, but the list of what must be done quietly rearranges itself in the mind. Time begins to compress, not because it's moving faster, but because there is no room left for anything unnecessary. Tasks that aren't essential are dropped. Things that can wait, wait. Only the actions that ensure the cabin can function on its own for many hours, perhaps many days, are kept. You step outside once more, not for heavy work, just to check the wind's direction, the color of the sky, the way the snow is falling, not straight down but at a slight unified angle. There's no threat in the sight, only certainty. The storm is coming, but not yet. No one panics. Panic wastes heat. Panic breaks rhythm. Every movement now becomes more precise. The door is checked again. The coverings are tied more securely. The quick lighting pieces of wood are placed close to the stove, not to be used immediately, but so no one will need to search in the dark. The children keep sleeping. No one wakes them. Their rest is part of the preparation. A well-rested body holds warmth better. Adults speak even less, not from tension, but because words aren't needed for understanding. Outside, the light begins to dim, not because the sun is setting, but because the clouds are thickening, lowering the sky. The world feels more enclosed, even without walls. You sense clearly that from this moment on, everything must be finished before the storm truly arrives. There is no race against anyone, no victory to claim, only being done in time. The pot of water is moved to a safer place. The stove is adjusted to burn more slowly. The wood supply is checked one last time. No one does extra. No one leaves anything undone. This race has no pounding footsteps. It happens in the mind, in the body, in the smallest decisions. Go or stay, open or close, take more or leave it. The storm is not treated as an enemy. It is simply a phase. When the snow begins to fall more heavily, you are already inside the cabin. The door closes. The wooden bar slides into place, fitting perfectly on the first try, as if it had always been waiting for this moment. The sound outside changes. The wind becomes clearer. Snow brushes against the wooden walls, creating a steady, whispering rustle. Not violent, not urgent, just enough to remind you that the world beyond is moving. Inside, the fire remains steady. The warmth does not rise, but it does not fall either. Everything is ready for stillness. Time is no longer compressed. It opens up. You sit down. There is nothing more to do. The body understands that the hardest part has passed. No clocks are checked, no hours counted. The storm will come and it will go. The cabin will hold its rhythm. In the modern world, storms are news. Here, a storm is a stretch of time, a time to stay, to listen, to trust what has been prepared. And as the snow thickens outside, as the wind settles into its steady pace, the people inside the cabin know it is time for one more important act, not to fight the storm, but to reinforce the living space itself, sealing even the smallest gaps, so that warmth will not be lost during the long hours ahead. When the storm has reached the cabin, when snow begins to settle evenly on the ground, and the wind finds its own steady rhythm, people no longer think about going outside. Not out of fear, but because this is the moment to stay in and strengthen what is protecting them. The cabin is no longer just a shelter now. It becomes the final boundary. You stand and move slowly along the wooden walls, carrying no complex tools, only a bucket of clay prepared earlier, a small amount of fine ash and handfuls of dry fibers, animal hair perhaps, or old cloth torn into strips. These simple materials have rested quietly in a corner of the cabin for days, waiting for exactly this time. This is chinking, a technique never learned from books, remembered instead by the hands. You use bare fingers to feel for gaps between the logs, not relying on sight at first because skin senses cold faster. Wherever you feel the faintest draft, that is where work is needed. It does not have to be sealed completely, only slowed. Clay is mixed with ash. The ash keeps it dry, the clay gives it grip. The mixture is not pretty, not uniform, but pressed into the cracks it settles quietly, stopping the cold air that is searching for a way inside. You do not rush. Each gap is treated as its own task. Fibers are pushed deep first to form a soft cushion, then the clay mixture follows, and finally a thin layer of ash on the surface. Every layer has a purpose. Every material has its place. No explanation is needed, the hands already know. The cabin is not meant to be sealed like a box. It must breathe. Small gaps are left on purpose, enough to let air circulate slowly. If the cabin were too tight, moisture would build up, breath from people, steam from cooking pots, sweat from bodies, all needing a path to escape. This folk technique is not about perfection, it is about balance. You continue along the walls. Where the wind strikes harder, the chinking is thicker. Where exposure is less, a lighter layer is enough. The cabin changes not in shape but in feeling. The space grows calmer, steadier. Outside snow begins to pile up against the walls, and no one clears it away. Snow becomes a second wall, a natural layer of insulation. As it deepens, it traps cold air outside and slows the wind before it ever reaches the wood. The cabin takes on a white outer coat, not made by human hands but accepted and used by them. Not resisted, not removed. The cabin now feels like armor, not hard, not shining, but sufficient. You look around and realize nothing here is unnecessary. There are no decorations, no objects filling space for their own sake. Everything either holds heat, supports daily living, or waits for the moment it will be needed. This knowledge does not come from one person. It is the result of generations. A parent works while a child watches. The child grows and works while another watches. Each winter discards what fails and keeps what holds warmth. No arguments, no written records. The body remembers. When the chinking is finished, you step back, not to admire, but to feel. The wind still blows outside. Snow continues to fall, but inside the space is more stable. The fire burns more evenly. Warmth no longer drains away as quickly. This is not a victory-only preparation done at the right time. Children keep sleeping. Adults sit near the stove. No one says the cabin is safe. No one claims certainty. Yet everyone senses that for now things are as good as they can be. In the modern world, insulation is a product. Here it is a relationship between wood, earth, ash, snow, and people. Each contributes something. None dominates. The cabin does not fight winter. It finds a shared rhythm with it. As night deepens and the storm fully envelops the outside world, the cabin no longer shudders with every gust. It stands still, as if accepting its test. The people inside do the same, no added worry, no further action. Because once every crack has been sealed, once this simple armor has been placed around the cabin, what remains is no longer technique or material. What remains is memory of those who did not finish in time, of lessons paid for in silence, and of why these small, careful forms of knowledge have been preserved with such care. Once the cabin has been reinforced, once the wind outside can no longer find its way through the smallest gaps, something else remains present in the space, not as a shape, but as a feeling, a presence without sound, yet heavy enough that everyone senses it. Memory. No one speaks of it right away. No one tells stories while the storm continues its steady breath outside. But in the low firelight, in the pauses between breaths, that memory finds its way back on its own. You remember not through clear images, but through sensation of a family who once lived not far from here. No one recalls the exact year, only that it was also a long winter, also snow, also wind, also a cabin very much like this one. They did not die in a violent moment. There were no cries, no chaos. They died from the cold, slowly, quietly. People say their fire went out on a very calm night, not because of a great storm, Not because they lacked wood, simply because they did not tend it long enough, or because the stove was placed poorly, or because they did not know that a late winter shift in wind can pull heat away faster than expected. No one is certain. Only the outcome is remembered. When others found them the next morning, there were no signs of panic. The children were still in their blankets, the adults nearby. Everything looked like a sleep that had not yet finished. But warmth had already been gone for a long time. This story is not told to frighten anyone. It is told so it will remain. No one describes it in detail. No one dwells on pain. Just a simple truth laid down gently without knowledge. People are not given a second chance. Winter does not allow retries. Inside this cabin, when the story is mentioned, often only in a short sentence, sometimes just in a shared glance, everyone grows quiet, not out of sadness but out of understanding. The silence is heavy but not frightening. It is like an object placed on the table for all to see, then left there. No one covers it. No one avoids it. They simply accept that there were people who did not learn in time or learned too late. Knowledge here is not what lives in books. It is made of small things, knowing how to keep a fire alive through the night, knowing that chinking is not meant to block the wind completely but to slow it, knowing that snow is not an enemy but insulation if used well. Those who died were not weak. They died because they did not yet know enough. And because of that, knowledge is passed on without pride. No one says we are better. They only say, or say nothing at all, we have learned. You can feel this in the way people work. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is careless. No detail is dismissed as too small. Every action carries the shadow of those who are no longer here to try again. The silence in the cabin now is not empty. It is full of what has happened, of winters already lived, of lessons that need no words. Children continue sleeping. They do not need this story yet. Not now. Knowledge comes in stages. Not everything is told at once, but everything done around them, the way adults tend the fire check, the wind refused to overlook small details. These are lessons already being passed on. You begin to understand that in this world knowledge is not preserved because it is clever. It is preserved because it saves lives. No one debates which method is better or more efficient. Only which methods have carried people through winter alive. Those methods remain. They are repeated until they become instinct. The story of the family who died does not make sleep fearful. It makes sleep careful, deeper, quieter, because everyone knows they are doing all they can, not to defeat winter, but to avoid repeating old mistakes. Firelight reflects on the faces of those still awake. There is no tension there. Only a gentle focus, as if each person carries a small share of responsibility, not heavy, but real. Outside the storm continues. Inside everything is still. And from that stillness another feeling begins to form, not fear, not sadness, but a soft vigilance. A rare state where people are both relaxed and ready, because they know that no matter how well they prepare, no matter how many lessons they have learned, winter may still test them once more, quietly, without warning. And when that moment comes, when a night stretches longer than expected, when the fire weakens at exactly the wrong time, there will be no space to remember old stories. There will only be action, slow, precise, and guided by the deepest instincts they have learned to trust. Midnight arrives quietly. There is no bell, no clear signal. Just the moment when the firelight in the stove no longer reflects on the walls the way it did before. You don't notice it with your eyes at first. You feel it on your skin. The warmth thins very slowly, but undeniably real. You open your eyes in that half-awake, half-dreaming state, not from fear, but because your body has learned the rhythm of the fire. When that rhythm shifts, the body knows. Inside the cabin, everything is still. Children breathe evenly. The wind outside continues in the same direction. And yet something is different. You sit up, not suddenly just enough to see the stove clearly. The familiar red glow has dimmed. It isn't gone, but it's no longer strong enough to sustain itself. The embers have drawn inward, breathing weakly like a living thing nearing exhaustion. This is the moment no one hopes for, not because of panic, but because of understanding. You don't call out. You don't wake the cabin. You move toward the stove with careful, quiet steps, each one measured so no heat is lost unnecessarily. You push the ash aside. The embers are still there, but they are not enough. You blow very gently. There is no immediate response. You wait. Time stretches thinner than usual. There are no long thoughts in your mind, no imagined outcomes, only short choices. What can still burn? What can still hold heat? How much time remains before the cold takes over? You glance around the cabin. The easy starting firewood has already been used. The main woodpile is outside, but the storm is thick now. Opening the door would be a trade, not impossible but dangerous. Your eyes rest on an old wooden chair. Not beautiful. Not sturdy. It has been there for years. You don't linger on the decision. There is no emotion, no hesitation. You pull it closer to the stove. The wood is dry. Enough. You break the chair apart, not violently, not in anger, just enough force to separate it into pieces. The wood makes a brief sound, then goes quiet. No one wakes. Everything happens in near total silence. You place the smaller pieces into the stove. Not too many. Not packed tight. You leave space for the fire to breathe, even though its breath is weak. Another soft breath from you. Slow. Steady. The fire does not flare, but it shifts. A faint red line appears along the edge of the wood. Not clear, not strong, but enough to tell you the choice was right. You don't feel relief. You continue. Another piece. Wait. Breathe. In moments like this, there are no heroes. No one thinks they are saving the family. No one will tell this story later in a loud voice. This is not an achievement. It is reflex. Humans have done this many times before. Only this time the fire is weaker than usual. You feel the warmth return slowly. It doesn't spread right away. It gathers near the stove. You lower yourself closer, shielding the faint drafts trying to slip in. With your own body you create a buffer. No one taught this. It is instinct. Inside the cabin, sleep continues. A child shifts slightly. A quiet exhale. No one wakes. And that is what you protect, not the fire itself, but the sleep. Fire needs time. You give it time. At last, the red glow widens. The embers wake. Not strong, but strong enough to feed themselves. You add a larger piece of wood not to raise the heat quickly, but to give the fire something to hold on to now that its strength is returning. You step back a pace. You don't leave. Just far enough to watch. Firelight reflects on the wooden walls again, dim but steady. Your breathing slows. Not because tension is gone, but because the rhythm has returned. No one applauds. No one knows. The old chair is now only half-burned wood. An object has disappeared, but nothing is missing. In this cabin, everything can be transformed when needed. Nothing matters more than life. You return to your sleeping place. You don't fall asleep immediately. You lie there listening to the faint crackle of the fire, a familiar sound. Enough to close your eyes. Enough for the body to release. Outside, the storm continues. Inside, the rhythm is preserved. The crisis night leaves no obvious trace by morning. No one mentions it. No one retells it. But it changes how people prepare for the nights that follow quietly, deeply, without words. And because the fire once nearly died, because people once had to rely on their deepest instincts, another arrangement will begin to take shape. Not to manage the fire, but to face the cold with something even older than flame, human warmth, gathered together, held close within a smaller, safer space, like a primitive shelter carried forward into the long night. After the night when the fire nearly died, no one speaks about it in the morning. There is no need. People simply change the way they remain in the space quietly. Not with new tools, not with new materials, but with themselves. The solution now does not lie in the stove, not in the woodpile, not in technique. It lies in the body. You begin to reduce the living space. Wide space is no longer necessary. The cabin remains, but inside it a smaller zone is formed. Blankets are pulled closer. Animal hides are laid lower. Heavy cloths are lowered. Not to divide completely, but to let warmth linger longer. This is not building a house. This is building a thermal tent, a space within a space, a place where breath does not disappear too quickly. People move slowly. No one gives orders. No one directs. Each person knows where to sit, where to lie, which way to turn. Children are placed in the center first, not because they are weak, but because they radiate warmth steadily and evenly. Adults settle around them, backs turned outward, faces inward. Bodies form a circle, not tight, but close enough to feel each other's warmth, far enough to remain comfortable. There is no rigid arrangement, only gentle adjustments guided by breathing. Warmth begins to gather, not instantly, not dramatically, but truly. Each exhale does not vanish. It lingers, drifting slowly in this smaller space. Heat from backs, shoulders, thighs, hands spreads and blends, creating a shared microclimate, not hot but stable. This is something humans have done for a very long time, before houses, before fire, before language itself. Returning to instinct does not mean returning to fear. It means returning to what has worked. Human bodies know how to keep each other warm as long as they are not separated. You can feel the difference clearly between the air inside the human circle and the space beyond it. Extend a hand outward, and the cold immediately returns. Bring it back in, and warmth settles gently over the skin. The boundary is unmistakable even without being seen. No one says this is right. Everyone simply feels this is enough. Inside this space, breathing slows. Heartbeats soften. Bodies no longer have to fight off each small wave of cold. They are allowed to rest, and when the body rests, the mind follows. Children fall asleep first, not from exhaustion but from safety. Their heads rest against one another or against adults. There are no loud lullabies, only the steady rhythm of breath, slow, repeated, ancient, without melody. Adults relax as well. They do not fall fully asleep at once, remaining in a half-waking state, enough to keep the warmth intact enough to sense any small change in the air. The stove is no longer the center now. It recedes into the background. The fire still burns, but it does not need to be large. It no longer carries the full responsibility of warmth. Human bodies have taken on part of that task, and in sharing it, everything becomes lighter. This microclimate is held not by force, but by closeness. You realize this kind of warmth cannot be measured by a thermometer. It is not high, but it is deep. It does not make skin burn, but it eases the chill in the bones. And more than that, it keeps the mind from wandering. In the modern world, we often sleep alone. Here, sleep is a shared act. No one feels confined. No one feels deprived of freedom. On the contrary, closeness creates something very old, the sense that if you fully let go, someone will still be there. The storm continues outside. Wind presses against wooden walls, but within the human circle, space seems to pause. This is not a temporary tactic. It is a primal solution, not to defeat winter, but to move alongside it. When you close your eyes, you do not think about tomorrow. You do not think about whether the fire will last or how the wind may shift. Every thought is set down like the final heavy object released from the hands. Your breath joins the shared breath. Your heartbeat joins another rhythm. And in that moment, humans are no longer separate individuals fighting the cold. They become a larger body, slow, warm, and sufficient to pass through the long night. Once the circle of warmth is steady, once sleep has reached nearly everyone, nothing more needs to be done. Only the rhythm must be kept, presence maintained, the night allowed to pass without further effort. And within this quiet, protected state, people begin to enter another rhythm, the rhythm of taking turns, waking and sleeping, watching not only the fire but one another, so that life is carried intact all the way to dawn. Once the circle of warmth has stabilized, once everyone's breathing has merged within that small shared space, the night does not end. It simply shifts into another rhythm, the rhythm of gentle vigilance, one that never fully wakes anyone, yet never allows anyone to sleep too deeply. No one stays awake all night. No one sleeps without interruption. Watching the fire is not standing guard. Watching people is not observation. It is an ancient rotation so slow it nearly dissolves into sleep itself. You open your eyes when it is your turn without being called. The body knows. Sleep remains light enough to hear the fire, light enough to feel the cold if it returns. You sit up carefully, not breaking the circle of warmth, not changing the space, only separating yourself slightly, just enough to see the stove. The fire is still there, not large but steady. You don't add wood immediately. You simply look. You listen. The fire breathes evenly. You bring your hand closer to feel the heat, not too close, just enough to know it is still doing its work. When the fire is steady, you turn to watch the people. The children are deeply asleep, their breathing slow, and regular chests rising and falling. You pull a blanket corner back into place where it has shifted. You do not wake them. You simply keep the warmth from escaping. A small foot has slipped out, colder than the rest of the body. You cover it again gently. You check skin. You check limbs, not to search for danger but to preserve balance. The adults sleep more lightly. They are accustomed to this half-dreaming state. A small shift, a long breath. You do not wake them. There is no need. Their bodies already know how to adjust. Your task is only to ensure no one drifts out of the shared warmth. Wearing layers while sleeping is not meant to burden the body but to reduce the work the fire must do. The inner layers hold warmth close to the skin. The outer layers keep it from escaping. No one undresses to chase perfect comfort. They choose stability instead. A slightly firm, steady sleep is safer than a deep sleep that grows colder without notice. You return to the stove and add a small piece of wood, not to raise the temperature, only to keep the rhythm. The wood is chosen carefully, not too large, not resin heavy, just enough to burn slowly while you return to the human circle. When your watch is done, you lie back down. You don't fall asleep at once. The body needs a few breaths to rejoin the shared state. When the warmth around you feels familiar again, when the heartbeat slows, sleep arrives on its own. Then it is someone else's turn. This rotation has no fixed hours, no clock. It runs on sensation. When one person has slept enough, another wakes. When someone stays awake a little longer, their sleep will be deeper in the next turn. The community balances itself. No one says, "It's my turn." No one says, "You rest now." Everything moves like breathing. Watching life is not about keeping someone awake. It is about keeping the rhythm unbroken. During your watch, there are few thoughts. You do not replay the crisis night. You do not think about the storm outside. You simply remain present, ready to feel the smallest change. This is survival within sleep, not through tension but through sharing. No one carries the entire night alone. No one holds too much responsibility. Each person keeps only a very small part, but together those small parts cover the whole long night. Outside, the storm may still blow. Inside, the watch moves like waves. When you sleep, someone else is awake. When they sleep, you will wake. Not to control one another, but so no one is left alone with the cold. In the modern world, sleep is private. Here, sleep is communal. Each person sleeps more deeply, knowing someone else is keeping the rhythm. They do not need to see it. They only need to trust it. And that trust allows the body to release even in harsh conditions. Watching the fire, watching people, watching life, these three are inseparable. When one is done well, the others grow lighter. When one is neglected, the entire circle falters. But tonight the circle holds. You wake once more. The fire remains. The warmth is sufficient. Everyone sleeps. You sit for a moment longer, not from worry, but because this moment is unusually calm, a rare stillness in the long winter. Then you lie back down. You close your eyes. Your breath joins the shared breath. The night passes without needing to be remembered, without needing a mark, only to be lived through. And when the watch has repeated enough times, when the storm outside has grown tired, when the cold no longer cuts as sharply as before, a very pale light appears, one that does not wake anyone, only signals that the circle of night has closed, and another morning is arriving slowly and quietly, carrying life intact into the new day. After the watch has rotated through the night, after breathing has synchronized, and the fire has held its rhythm, the darkness begins to thin. It does not disappear all at once. It simply grows lighter, like a blanket being pulled away very slowly. Dawn does not arrive with strong light. It arrives through a subtle change in the air. You are the first to notice, not because you are awake, but because your body has learned the night's rhythm. When that rhythm loosens, you know. A pale grey light slips through the crack in the door, not enough to see clearly, only enough to tell inside from outside. Everyone is still asleep, but the sleep is different now. It is no longer the sleep that carries people through the cold. It is the sleep that follows after the cold has been endured. You sit up, slowly. You do not wake anyone. There is no need. Inside the cabin, everyone is intact. Breathing is steady. Body heat is stable. No one is frozen. No one has been left behind. One look is enough to know. The family is alive. That is all. No one says we won. There is no victory here. Winter did not lose. Humans did not win. One night has passed, and everyone is still here. You add a small piece of wood to the stove, not because it is cold, but out of habit. The fire responds easily. It needs no effort. It, too, has survived the long night. Gentle light spreads without urgency. Children stir. An adult shifts nearby. No one jumps up. No one rushes into the day. Dawn here is not a call to action. It is a confirmation that what was done was enough. Outside, the storm has grown tired. The wind remains, but it no longer cuts. Snow lies still deeper and smoother. The world looks as if it has been quietly rearranged after a long night. Trees remain where they stand. The cabin remains. The people remain. You open the door, just a little careful not to let the cold rush in, only to look. Pale light rests on the snow, not blinding, not breathtaking, simply beautiful because it is calm. You take a breath. The air is cold, but it does not bite. Your lungs accept it without resistance. Your body does not react sharply. That is adaptation, not because you are stronger, but because you have learned how to stay. In that moment you think of the present, not to compare what is better or worse, but to place two worlds gently side by side. Somewhere far away there are rooms always held at 68 first. Constant warmth, no fire to tend, no chinking, no human circle. Just a switch, a system humming quietly inside the walls. There people sleep alone and remain warm. There is nothing wrong with that. But when you think of the night that just passed, the fire that nearly died, the chair broken apart, the circle of bodies, the rotating watch, you realize something simple. Warmth is not only a number, it is presence. It is knowing that when you close your eyes, someone else is keeping the rhythm. It is trusting that if the fire weakens, someone will rise. No heroes, no promises, just being there. The family begins to wake, not all at once, not by schedule. A child opens their eyes. An adult pulls a blanket closer. A soft sigh releases the last weight of the night. No one retells the crisis. No one mentions the family who died. No one explains the techniques. Everything has done its work. Now it can rest. Breakfast is simple. No ceremony. Just enough to continue. There is no sense of celebration, only a quiet gratitude. Gratitude that the fire held, that bodies endured, that the community stayed together. In this world, survival is not a title. It is not displayed or recorded. It is carried lightly into the next day. You look around the cabin once more, the wooden walls, the sealed cracks, the snow leaning against the structure like a tired companion. Nothing is new yet, everything matters. And as the morning's work begins very slowly, as life settles back into its winter rhythm, your thoughts thin out. The long reflections have been taken by the night. What remains is presence. If you are listening to this story from a warmer, quieter place, you may not need to tend a fire, keep watch through the night, or sleep wrapped in layers. But you can still keep one small thing from that world, the slow rhythm, gratitude for what is holding you safe, letting go instead of trying to understand, allowing your body to sink into the bed the way snow settles gently onto the ground outside. You can let your eyelids grow heavy, your breathing slow, your shoulders soften. The night has passed. You are here. There is nothing more to do, only to rest as people once did after a long night, when what mattered most was not defeating the cold, but being together and sleeping in peace. From the story, how frontier families survived the coldest nights, what stays with us is not the brutal cold and not the extraordinary survival techniques. What remains is a very simple truth: human beings did not survive by becoming stronger than nature, but by listening to it and adapting. Those frontier families long ago did not try to defeat winter. They did not try to create endless heat, endless light, or endlessly complex solutions. They learned to preserve what they already had, keeping the fire burning slowly, keeping warmth within the body, keeping life moving at a steady rhythm, and most importantly, keeping one another close. In the modern world, we often face hardship with speed. We move faster, think harder, try to control everything more tightly. But this story whispers something very different when life becomes too cold, too heavy. The answer is not to speed up, it is to slow down. People in the past understood that energy was limited. Wood had to be used at the right moment. Fire had to be watched gently. Bodies needed rest in order to stay warm. And no one should remain alone for too long in the cold. These lessons born from harsh winters feel surprisingly close to our lives today. We all have our own cold nights, moments of loneliness, exhaustion, loss, or the feeling of being pulled too far away from what is simple and human. In those moments, what we often need most is not a grand solution, but a small circle of warmth. Someone to talk to, a slower routine, a safe space where we are allowed to rest. This story reminds us that the most precious warmth does not come from comfort or convenience, but from presence, from knowing that someone is keeping watch while you sleep, from knowing you are not facing the night alone. And sometimes simply allowing yourself to rest without proving anything to anyone is a very wise way to live. If you are listening to this now from a warm room, take a quiet moment of gratitude for the shelter above you, for the people who have kept you safe, and for yourself, for slowing down enough to listen. Thank you for being here, and for spending time with these slow, peaceful history stories. If this brought you a little calm, a little warmth before sleep, please like, share it with someone who might need a slower rhythm, and subscribe to continue joining us through many quiet nights ahead. And now you can let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your breathing slow, and sleep peacefully.